Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be covering building and modifying Crystal reports. Given the time allotted, this is going to be an overview rather than an in-depth technical session. So we're just going to cover how Crystal reports sort of works into your Sage 300 solution. So our agenda today is just going to cover some history, the requirements of what you need to modify your Crystal reports, where files are generally located within your Sage 300 installation, an overview of the customization directories in Sage 300, basic database linking from within Crystal reports, the basics of creating and modifying a report, the Sage 300 application object model, and a couple of best practices. And time permitting, hopefully we'll have time for some question and answer and some discussion. If everybody has any questions, again, feel free to type them in the chat as we go, and we'll get to those at the end. So first, I'd like to just cover a brief history of Crystal reports. So for those who have been longtime Sage 300 users, the product originated as an old DOS-based program called Backpack Plus back in the 80s. And at the time, all the reports were sort of coded with the code-based approach. So it was very sort of on-screen text-based. And the idea was that they wanted to do a WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get, report designer. So the idea is that it was a graphical interface where you can click and drag and visually add items to a report. So the basis of that is the history of Crystal reports. It started as a product called Quick Reports, and that's morphed over the years, and it's been acquired by several different companies to what we now know as Crystal reports today. And it's sort of an industry standard reporting tool used beyond sort of Sage 300, but the origins of it sort of started with this Backpack Plus. It's a full-featured report designer and quite powerful with a lot of options. And Sage's approach with that, with most of their products, is to focus on what they do and then sort of leverage the other industry standard tools to build reports, similar to how Sage 300 integrates with Microsoft Office and Excel for some of the GL financial reporting. And likewise with Crystal reports. So just to differentiate, most of these Sage 300 forms, your AR statements, AR invoices, AP checks, items like that, and most of the reports that you see on screen are actually Crystal reports files underneath it all. So a quick note about requirements. When you install Sage 300, it installs a Crystal runtime engine, and that runtime engine allows you to sort of display the report. So when you print your checks or an AR invoice or a statement out of Sage 300, that Crystal runtime engine is the tool that sort of runs behind the scenes that allows you to view and print. Not to be confused with the full Crystal reports designer software, which is a separately licensed application that's required to modify and edit. So just by having the Sage 300 client installed is enough to sort of generate reports, but to actually modify them and edit them, you're going to require Crystal reports license. So again, that's separate than your Sage 300 license, and it's a separate installer, and it's licensed sort of by workstation. So if you have any interest in sort of modifying your own Crystal reports, a separate license will be required, and those are available from Sage. So you can contact your BAS account manager if you're interested in procuring a license for Crystal reports. So the next part is file location. So everyone sort of sees the nice graphical Sage 300 System Manager screen, but behind the scenes on your computer, Sage actually loads all these Crystal reports, which are .rpt files, similar to how Word is .doc and Excel is XLS. There's a bunch of files sort of within your Sage 300 client folder. So by default, without any customizations, as we can see, the average typical Sage 300 installation, according to our BAS best practices, is typically in C Sage 300. Inside of that folder on your hard drive, there's a subfolder for every module. So on the screen here, we see the XX, but the XX is sort of a stand-in for each module. Accounts payable is AP, accounts receivable, AR, general ledger, GL, so on and so forth, followed by a versioning thing. So as we can see on screen here in this installation, looking at sort of the preview at the bottom of the screen, this is just the upper corner of your Sage 300 preview. It always displays where the report is running from. So this is the default AR invoice, ARD-INVO.rpt, and this is just sort of a demonstration of where that's running. So if you don't have a customized version, Sage is always going to pull the reports from this sort of folder. And the idea is you can always see in the top left corner when you run a report to preview where it's actually doing that. So you can see here on this slide, see Sage, Sage 300, AR71A, ENG, ARD, INVO. So this goes for just about every report in Sage, all the way through to purchase orders, order entry invoices, any sort of inventory control worksheets, pretty much any report icon in Sage 300, there is a RPT file sort of behind the scenes where that runs. So Sage has a feature called customization directories, and that's typically available at least under the admin login, depending on your sort of user rights. Into the administrative services subfolder on the left-hand tree, you'll see an item called customization directories. So the idea with customization directories is it's a substitution folder. So in lieu of that file path that we just looked at the previous slide, the idea is that we would identify a subfolder, usually on your server in a larger installation, where we put our customization directory files. So the idea there is that it wouldn't look to sort of the Sage 300 local folder, and it rather looks to this alternate path. So if this is defined in this customization directory screen, Sage is programmed to sort of look for that first. So if I'm going to print a report called ARD INVO, Sage is going to look to this customization directory path first. And if it finds a copy there in the right sort of folder, it will display that version instead of the one on the default. So this makes the Sage 300 extremely customizable. Any report that you can sort of print to screen, you can sort of modify and place this in the customization directory, and it will sort of apply to sort of all users. This is a central configuration, so you can sort of steer your users sort of to see what reports you want them to see. In this example here, the first two columns, you'll note user ID and company ID. The star is the wildcard to indicate all users, and you can get pretty in-depth with your configuration. For example, if you wanted to set user Bob when he's logged into company ABC, you can sort of redirect his session to look at a set of specific folders. So again, if you're looking to hide information on a bank deposit screen or some bit of information, you can customize a report and basically redirect any user or all users and be creative into sort of what reports they run. So it's a nice way to sort of show all of your customized reports, as well as get creative in maybe doing some things that maybe the Sage security can't do if you're looking to sort of protect some information in your custom reports. As a best practice, we typically put all of custom reports, and we'll get to the reason why later in the best practices session, but it's a good idea to sort of keep these all central. One, it's a nice inventory of all of your customizations. And two, it just makes it easier to manage any of your custom reports as you have within Sage 300. So to continue on, as an example there, I showed that default AR invoice, so the ARD Invo. So since I have a customization directory, I dropped a custom version of that in my custom folder. Now, when that file exists in the right path in the customization directory folder, you'll notice in the print preview that it's actually pulling the version from my custom folder as it's defined in the customization directory. So again, that's the way to think of it as a substitute. So Sage will always check the customization directory first. If it finds a copy of the report there, then it'll sort of display that one. Otherwise, it'll go back to the default one inside the Sage folder. So moving forward, if you do have a Crystal Reports Designer license, and again, a reminder that that's a completely separate license product, you need to purchase an additional license and procure a copy of the Crystal Reports Designer software. All of the connections, and I don't want to get too deep of a dive into the Crystal Reports technical side of this, but all of the reports generally use the ODBC DSN in the Windows control panel, and what that is a database connector. So it actually ties right into your Sage 300 company database. In the example here on screen, SAM Ltd is a Sample Company Limited, is the database identifier in my Sage 300 installation, and I can set up a link to that right inside of Crystal Reports. So that when I actually have the Crystal Reports Designer, and there's a very simple file here on the right-hand side in the Field Explorer there, I've shown the AR Cus table, which is the AR Customers table inside the Sage 300 company database. And for the purposes of just demonstration here, I've done a very basic report where I've pulled a customer number, customer name, address, and contact. And again, this was the WYSIWYG thing I mentioned in the first slide, with what you see is what you get. And the idea is I can drag fields from the Field Explorer to display on the report. And again, this is a very simple example. Crystal Reports can be way more complex. We can do groupings, we can do filters and items like that. but the just general overview of what the Crystal Report Designer looks like is up there on the screen now. One of the nice features when you're designing Crystal reports is what's this going to look like? Do I have to sort of drop this over to Sage, or can I sort of play with this and during my design phase so I can see kind of what I'm going to get? And the nice feature is, yes, the answer to that question is yes. Crystal Reports is linked to your Sage 300 company database in your SQL Server. So pressing F5 in the Report Designer will actually link to the database and actually pull the information. This is typically read-only, so there's no write back to the data, so there's no sort of security concerns in doing this. This just lets you sort of see on the fly what your report is going to look like. So again, my report here is attached to Sample Company Limited, and within a quick few seconds of designing, dropping 5 or 6 fields in the report and hitting F5, I can sort of see what my report's going to look like for when I do go to send it to Sage 300. Again, this is a very basic report example, just due to the time constraints we have today, just to sort of show you what's available and how quickly you can sort of develop reports. So continuing on this, if I wanted to deploy this very basic customer reporting list into the Sage 300 desktop, I can right-click anywhere in the Sage 300 System Manager. I can choose New and click Report. And basically, I've saved my report to my customization directory, as we can see on the screen here, and I can create a shortcut to that RPT file. That way, when users double-click that, it will display the report that we just designed, and it's an icon within Sage 300. You'll notice here as well in the middle screen, there's an option to deploy this for all users in Sage 300. And that's a nice quick way to sort of, everybody in my organization is going to need this AR customer listing that I just created. If I click that all users box, that report will be distributed to every Sage 300 login for that company. Again, if the report contains sensitive information, I'd want to uncheck that all users box, and that would just be for my ID. So if I was logged in as admin, for example, I would have to be logged in as admin in order to see that icon. So it does give you options there if you want to sort of, it's a bit of an all or nothing. If you wanted to sort of deploy it to all users, I'd check the all users box. Otherwise, I would have to log in as each user and basically set up that icon if the report does contain sensitive information that you wouldn't want everyone in the organization to see. Application object models. So the common question is, how do I know where to find stuff in Sage 300 to design my reports? I look in the SQL database and I see a bunch of tables that make absolutely no sense to me. How do I get into the design of reports? So Sage does publish a database schema, and some of this sort of gets into the technical aspect. But there is a dictionary, a library available that describes what all of those fields and all of the tables inside that database sort of look like to help you design the report. So here's just a snapshot of that AR customer table that I was referencing earlier in my report, and you can see it gives you a laundry list of what each of the table names are. So at the very top, we know this ID cust is the customer number, and as well you can see the type field, and that shows you sort of that it's what characters it accepts. So for the customer number, they are string values with a maximum of 12 characters, and so on and so forth. Whether or not it's an integer, some of them are switches, but the point is the takeaway is there's a database library that explains all of that. With that said, depending on the complexity of your report, obviously that customer listing I showed previously was pretty basic. That's pretty simple to design. Things that get a little bit more involved when you're talking about project and job costing reports or a commission report, there's a fair bit of sort of technical knowledge required to understand sort of how the database works. So oftentimes people always ask, can I develop my own Crystal reports? And the answer is, yes, of course you can. The second point though is, you may not want to, depending on the complexity of your report. You have to have a pretty solid foundation in understanding where Sage stores data and how the flow of information works in order to design sort of a more of a complex report. So if you're looking to, do some basic changes, how do I add my logo to my invoice? How do I, change my remittance advice to include some additional information? Those are pretty basic changes and well within most users' range. But anything sort of in the complex needs probably would require a little bit of assistance, and that's where we're happy to sort of fill that gap. We do have Crystal Reports designers on staff here at BAS, and we do this sort of thing every day. So a couple of options with regards to best practices if you do design your reports. We always highly recommend that you store everything in the customization directory. One, it's a central sort of repository, a library of all your customizations, and this tends to come into play when we install Sage 300 upgrades. For those of you who are using an older version, Sage supports, N-2 is their policy, so the current version is 2024 plus 2 versions back. So one of the big issues that often arises when we install upgrades or migrate your installation to a new server is, where are my customizations? So as a best practice, we typically recommend keeping them in the customization directory. So again, it's a nice library so that we know when we go to install upgrades, we can just check that one folder and see all of your sort of custom reports. Good to know if you do get into the habit of designing your own. The next sort of step is avoiding duplication. So a rough example is if your Sage 300 installation has multiple companies, so an ABC company and a DEF company, a lot of people would tend to say, oh, I want the ABC logo on the invoice, and then I'll create a second invoice for the DEF company. That's pretty much identical to the first invoice, but the only thing that changes is the logo. So with some creative thinking in Crystal Reports, there's no need to sort of create 2 different invoices. The idea is that we can actually drop both logos on the same report if the other 99.9% is identical and the only thing that's different between the 2 is the logos. A lot of people tend to sort of create a second report when it's kind of unnecessary. So we can program Sage 300 to sort of check certain elements, program your Crystal report to check certain elements in Sage 300 to say, hey, if this is the ABC company, display the ABC company logo. But if they're printing this report from the DEF company, display the DEF logo. So Sage has some, a lot of information sort of contained, and it passes that information when you're running the report at runtime. So the report itself can be programmed to say, hey, Sage has sent me this information, when X happens, display Y. And the idea with that is when it comes time to do upgrades and to migrate and to move, forms generally need to be verified. So the fewer forms you have, it's just an easier process to manage, as well as for onboarding new users. If you just sort of stick to the defaults, it's easy when a new user starts that they just sort of inherit all the steps. The last point about best practices and considerations is about using the right tool for the job. So a lot of people say, how do I get my data out of Sage 300? I need this stuff in Excel. And a lot of people tend to sort of create a custom Crystal report just for that reason. It's a way to sort of bring something up on screen, and the Crystal Print Preview has an export option where you can dump the entire report sort of to Excel or text or CSV. And while that works, there's sort of better ways to get Sage data out of the database and into Excel. The reminder here is that Crystal Reports is a visual tool. It's meant to sort of build reports with titles and headers and page numbers, meant to be consumed sort of visually. So while you can export that data from Crystal Reports preview to an Excel file, a lot of users will find that there's a fair amount of cleanup, and depending on the complexity of the report, things might not line up in the right columns. You have to do a lot of cleanup to sort of get rid of page numbers and all of the stuff that sort of generally appears at the top of the Sage report, the company name, the date, the title of the report. None of that stuff is usually required in Excel. So just a reminder about using the right tool for the job. And if you have those sort of needs and requests, we can certainly help with that. But Crystal Reports is not necessarily an export tool. And just a reminder that if you have complex reporting requirements, we're here to help. So if you're not sure what you want or you don't think designing Crystal Reports is in your wheelhouse as far as having a technical ability and an understanding of sort of how databases work and relational databases work and how data flows. We here at BAS can sort of fill that gap if you have complex reporting needs. We've rarely come across a situation that we haven't been able to solve with some type of solution or another. Everything from very complicated commission reports to sales analysis type reports, project and job costing type reports. So if you can think of something that you need, chances are we can sort of help you get there with the Crystal Reports customization that will sort of carry through to your installation through upgrades and whatnot. And if you don't feel like purchasing a Crystal Reports license, then we have the sort of ability to sort of design those reports for you without you purchasing a Crystal Reports license.